Throughout the year that my daughter was with her father, Child Protection weren't interested in me or my story or my progression or whether I was capable of having my daughter around. I feel having a mental illness made it really hard for me to get my story heard through Child Protection. I seen the difference with her father as they were quite happy to listen to his story and take his word for it. They gave him the benefit of the doubt so many times. Being that they had taken her from me and handed her to him, I do believe they wanted to protect their choice.
I was in a very confusing, very heightened state. My mind wasn't totally focused. I respected the fact that the Child Protection came on board and that they were there to assist me. But when I sort of think back to it now, there's a lot of mental blanks. So I don't think I was really in the right headspace to actually absorb all the information that they were trying to offer or to even share my story correctly. So it was quite a difficult space for me.
Sharing my story with Child Protection at the beginning was very difficult, was a little bit stressful because these people had just come into my house and I felt like if I was to be truthful at the beginning and tell them what I'm experiencing and what I'm going through, that they would judge me as a bad mother. But once my story was shared and told with Child Protection, when I had one consistent worker rather than changing workers, it was a lot easier, especially having the advocate supports in place, which would tell my story for me instead of having to repeat myself a number of times.
I don't believe they did listen to my story at all. And how it started was I went to pick my son up from school and I was told I had to go into an office. I went into an office and there was my son with two DHS workers talking to him without my knowledge. And then the next day, it was about 10 o'clock that night, two DHS workers came to my house with two police officers and told me they had a court order for me to go to court and they were taking my son off me and removing him out of my hands, and that shattered my heart. For 12 months I was really sick and it took me a long time to find out what was wrong with me, and they judged me. I suppose they always told me I looked tired. The school told them I looked tired all the time, and they just assumed a lot of things and thought I was an alcoholic and things like that. But they never once stopped to think that I might have been dying or something.
I didn't really have an opportunity, I guess, to explain the circumstances I found myself in. And I think because, look, I was homeless. It was clear that I had a drug problem, that I was really taken on face value. What you saw was what you got, and there wasn't any exploration by child protection around that.
In comparison to the Ballarat office, where I was being called constantly, I was aware of times that they would be calling me. They were always on time. They spent their time with us and really made us feel comfortable. I seemed to be chasing the Footscray office all the time, trying to get help from them or to find out what was going on. I found that in the Footscray office, they were very busy. They didn't really have time for you. They didn't have time to listen to you.
But it was more mentally and physically exhausting, just having to sit there and repeat yourself over and over and over again. And I understand that the workers are there to help support you. At the end of the day, the goal for both the workers and the families are the children. Their safety is paramount in everything. But as a parent, I'm trying to build that new relationship with that worker. Yes, it does bring hope, but then also, you're worried that you're forgetting something. You're worried that the kids aren't going to re-engage again, which was my case. They just hated. They had not only their workers, individual workers, whether it was counsellors, whether it was different therapies, whether it was school engagement. Then we'd have family therapy. So it wasn't just having a new child protection worker on board. This actually added to the plate of the kids having to answer more questions. But
a few child protection involvements, and each one were different. Sharing my story the last time was a lot easier because there was one consistent worker, even though he was a tough man. We ended up getting through it all in the end, but I believe having the advocates on your behalf makes your interaction with DFFH a lot easier, as you don't need to go into that emotional place every time, go back to, where you were in the past and repeat yourself over and over.
When I met a new DHS worker, I had to explain myself over and over again, my story, and it was something that you just get tired of doing over and over again, till I got to, like I said, learn my rights and what I was, what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, and I realised that I don't have to have. They don't want me to have Tom, Dick, and Harry coming in my house, so I don't want that either. So I just want the one worker, and I put that straight to them, and eventually I ended up getting the one worker. But it took a long time though for me to get that one worker and for me to stand up to myself. So
look, again, I think it probably wasn't passed on or retold in terms of, I guess, a handover with new workers, because a lot of new workers, for me and other parents that I have worked with as well, certainly this rings true, is that you feel like you're moving into the whole beginning phase of working with child protection again, which is, I think, quite frustrating for parents, because they feel like they've made all this progress with a particular worker, or they've had certain achievements or whatever, and had an understanding with workers around what the case plan is, and then the worker changes. And I literally did have one worker say, look, I know you haven't been doing drug screens for 6 months, and we were satisfied that that was okay, but I'm a new worker. I want to make sure that we're up to speed for myself. And so that was a process that started again, where I was going to do screens 3 times a week, whereas as a parent and as a person, I felt like I had already accomplished and demonstrated that. So it was really frustrating to have to feel like, oh, here we go again, because behind that is the worry. I actually thought I was doing really well. I thought things were on track. Why am I, downgraded is not the right term, but why am I having this? It feels like a setback. And that's actually quite disheartening in that process, because there is that fear underlying of like, well, what's happened that I'm back here again? What does this actually change? What's the impact of this? Am I actually on the right track? It's quite frightening actually as a parent.
The impact of not having my story heard has caused so many issues. My confidence has gone. My bond with my daughter has gone. Well, it's not as strong as it should be. We're working on it every day. The trauma my daughter went through, because I wasn't heard. I went through times where I couldn't leave the house. I lost all my friends. I couldn't face anybody knowing that I'd lost my child. If only things had been different.
There certainly was a difference between me having the sense of being heard and me having the sense of being actually just listened to. You know, whilst I've had some workers that have just listened, they've just sat there, they've taken their notes, and you know, they've sort of tried to engage, but I haven't felt that connection with them. Whether that was a person-to-person connection that I just didn't feel, but I just, you know, I wasn't really impressed. If they had have engaged more willingly, or more like they really listened, they tried to understand what I was going, you know, what I was going through at that particular time, I think the outcome for that, you know, for that actual incident would have been a lot better and a lot faster. I think, you know, having them not really listen to you, and having to repeat your story and trying to get them to understand, and that it adds a lot of time onto, you know, onto your case. And
the impact of having any of our stories heard is just being able to be understood, not judged. And for the worker to say, okay, you know, this poor family has been through A, B, and C. However, they're never giving up. They're trying to go above and beyond. They're fighting every hurdle we put in their place. You know, give them the benefit of the doubt. Give them ongoing support.
It put a lot of stress on my family. The fact that I wasn't heard put a lot more stress on my house. It put a lot of stress on my son as well. You know, just being ripped out of by his mother. He'd been looked after. You know, I'd looked after him for 11 years of his life. He'd never been with anybody else before. So, and you know, and having a father that doesn't want nothing to do with him, and for DHS just to come in and to take your son ripped straight out of your arms, and they say they've done a lot of damage to me personally. They ripped my heart. I'd never felt something like that totally in my life, to have 4 older children, and I've never had DHS in my life ever in my whole life, and to have it, my son actually taken off me was only maybe a period of 8 to 9 weeks, but that was to me like a lifetime.
The impact of my story not being heard was that it did mean that I was involved in that system for longer. Things did have to be done again and again, ad nauseum, until it was satisfactorily demonstrated, and that was through changes of workers and things. But look, the greater impact, and I mentioned this as well, of not having my story heard and not being listened to, is that I literally invested the past 6 years into studying to be a professional, because I'm not ever going to be that parent in the room or that person in the room who doesn't get listened to because I don't have a degree or a diploma or whatever. That's actually how much that has mattered to me, and something that I use to inform my work with parents and families, that they do have the opportunity to have a voice and be a participant in these services that say, hey, we're here to tell you all the things that are wrong, And then we're going to blame you for not being able to fix them because we don't actually give you that opportunity to do that.
I think really hearing validates the parent. It makes them feel that they've got somebody on their side, that, you know, they feel secure, they feel safe, they, you know, oh, thank God somebody understands me. Maybe my kids aren't going to be taken away from me. Maybe it's not as bad as what I think. Maybe I'm the one that's just not coping and I need more supports. You know, how can this worker actually help me? It just opens up so much. So I think really hearing and not listening is just so powerful.
Out when they say that they're here to support the child, well, I believe that they should be there to support the mother and the child, because the mother can't look after the child if the mother's not being supported as well.
Even with the SAFER framework that Child Protection use, that there's a lot of credence given to the workers' professional judgment, ability to reason, all of their values, all of that kind of thing, but the same consideration is not given to the parent in that space. Whereas if we just made room for a parent and a professional to have that equal say right at the beginning across the board, that would follow through then, that all workers would actually be considering that parent as a person, as an expert, giving weight to that information that was provided.
Child protection need to clearly listen to both of the parents and give both parents an opportunity to speak and have their stories heard, regardless of who is the main carer of the child. That's so important because in a child's development, they need their parents by their side. And if there's any way for reconciliation or to have more time with a parent, that's going to be really beneficial to their development.
DFFH come into your life, they're reading strictly from a textbook. As I said, I've had a few encounters with them. Not one of them have been exactly the same. Very misleading information. You know, it's a scary time for a parent, a birth parent, a child, an extended family thinking, hang on, yes, there is issues, but does this really mean the child needs to be removed? Like, the third parties are more down to earth. They come from, I guess, a church community service background, where their heart's more in it, opposed to the DFFH worker. That's my experience.
I think it's really important for workers to understand that throughout all of this, it is quite easy for parents to be triggered and re-traumatized. I think some ways to sort of combat that would be read through some of the previous case notes, whether the files have been closed or not, just, you know, for your own information, just read up a little bit, you know, on the history of the family. Ask for clarification, you know, sort of paraphrase back to the families. If you don't understand something, just ask, you know. It's like, well, I don't quite understand, you know, this event that took place such and such a date. Can you explain that a little bit more for me? You know, what were you feeling? Oh, so how did you resolve that? You know, did you have any supports in place? Is there something that I can do? It sounds similar to what you're going through at the moment.
Or they should bring that worker out with them, really, and introduce the new worker to that person. And DHS, they are the ones that should be explaining the situation to the new worker. I shouldn't have to be doing their job for them. That's their job for them to explain it to them, but bring them out with them so that you feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more at ease with the new worker.
Sure, by actually being upfront and really clear about what their objectives are to begin with. Like, I guess parents don't come into that system thinking, oh, Child Protection are creating a case plan, they are documenting all of this in terms of looking at this from a risk-averse lens to promote safety for my child. I think parents, and I've spoken about this before, parents don't have the knowledge or understanding of case planning, whereas if Child Protection were actually more upfront about what case planning actually entailed, how they were actually coming at things, that parents actually would be better equipped and better informed around those discussions.
Obviously, they'd have to do an investigation, make sure the home is safe and whatnot. I get that part. But the part that I didn't like and raised concerns for myself and my family is them wanting to speak to, you know, a 5-year-old child in the room by themselves. You know, that's not protecting the child or the parent. It's not good for the child's welfare, psychological processes. And my solution and family's was, well, you can't speak to the child unless there's an adult or family member present in the room, which they didn't like very much. And you know, they go wrong there because they have a placement preservation team worker who is trained in that department to come out and speak to the children in a much nicer way.
You need to also be mindful that, you know, like in my case, for example, I had 20 plus years of survival mode. You know, I'm dealing with my own mental health. I'm dealing with my children's mental health. You know, I've got individual supports, whether it's for myself, for each of my children. I've got, you know, family supports. There's this huge scaffold of people around me just holding me up, just trying to support me to get from one day to the next, from 1 year to the next. And we have mental blanks. I mean, that the brain is amazing. It will block out things that are traumatizing. And so, you know, for us to sit there and go, okay, then I can pinpoint when this happened. No, there's a reason why your brain can't pinpoint when that happens, and just more badgering and badgering is going to get you more and more stressed. So I think, you know, sort of just taking all of that into consideration and knowing that the parents are doing the best job that they possibly can at that particular moment in time. Don't read too much into the way that they're presenting.
Did you feel like you're informed? Did you feel like you're included? Again, it comes back to no, including somebody and saying that they have decision-making capacity is not actually really including and decision-making capacity if they don't have the information required to make that decision.
Please take every report into account and follow up on information, especially if it comes from a parent, because parents have their children's best interests at heart.
Please, please, please don't, you know, don't think too hard on how they're presenting at that moment in time. You know, try and sort of say, how about we catch up at, you know, at another time when you're a little bit less frazzled, or, you know, just schedule another meeting. But yeah, it's, you know, I can totally understand that that everything gets put on the parent, you know, but also for these plans to actually work, you know, it's like the best case scenario. You know, it's like mum has to be able to implement these plans. The kids have got to be willing to actually go along with that, and everything's got to be rosy. And no, it don't work like that. Reality is not like that. You know, your family life's not like that. My family life's certainly not like that.
Right. Be real. Treat people as individuals. Understand their story. Understand what they've gone through. Don't just read from a textbook. Maybe put their shoes on and see how you would like it from their point of view.
So just think about what you're doing before you do it. You know, there's always just think about the actions, you know, like what's it going to do to this family? Am I making the right decision? Am I making the right choice? Talk to the family, like talk to the mother and the father a little bit more. Go and help them. Don't just, you know, say, is there anything we need to help you with? Do you need help in, you know, we just need to get a skip and so you can get rid of all your rubbish in your backyard, you know.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to include that missing piece, and that is parents, and they do need to be treated like parents and people. it shouldn't be this hard.